Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along Podcast, the weekly podcast where I guide my friends and first-time readers through my favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel Umineko When They Cry. We're discussing its narrative and themes, and they'll work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. Hope you'll join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's cat box. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjiima, we have our readers, James Capelli, Ben, Hayley, and Becca. Welcome, y'all. So, how was your read this week?
We're fucking back, baby! This is the reading I was ready for! I'm so excited. I was glued to my computer the entire time, other than one time, but we'll get to that. I'm just really excited to be back into the story.
Yeah, I want to get into it.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that Chekhov's gun that is the madness of Kinzo has finally been fired. I'm so ready for this.
Do we need to post that explanation for what Chekhov's gun is?
All right, it's going to take at least 2 hours to do, and then we'll go back to it.
We'll reiterate 4 times on what Chekhov's gun is.
At least. Yeah, it was an enjoyable read this week. I think I've realized what it is that's sending me to sleep. So whenever the rain is like the main sound effect, the rain and the wind, I'm just done for. Like, I did that in this reading because we were on the island a lot where it is raining the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's a problem for me.
The story, as it's set up on the game board, does take place during a storm.
This is objectively true.
So, good luck.
Yeah, I know, right? This is why I'm always falling asleep. I realize it's not the story, it's the sound.
It's the background noise.
Yep.
It's the background noise and the author's prose to reiterate things 7 times.
Yeah.
But what if I don't really grasp how the sheep puzzle works yet, guys?
Capelli, we're only on time number 2 of explaining what Chekhov's gun is. We'll get there.
This week, we are continuing episode 4, Alliance of the Golden Witch, with about 3 hours of the VN, ending on the line, "Women truly are noisy, coo-coo-coo," after which metal bars appear, which is videos 64 through 66 of the YouTube playlist. If you haven't caught up to that point yet, go ahead and stop the podcast and catch up before rejoining us. Our story resumes back on the game board, October 4th, 1986, the first day. Approaching 10 p.m., the children are escorted back to the guest house by Shannon, as the adults are about to begin the family conference proper. The cousins talk about greed of their parents, and Battler and Jessica tease George and Shannon for their hidden relationship. However, George turns things around on Jessica, bringing up her fledgling relationship with Cannon. In the meta-world, Battler is surprised that Kinzo is set to actually make an appearance, and Ange says that it is the witch's counterattack to Battler's speculation that Kinzo might already be dead. Back in the dining room, the adult siblings and Dr. Nanjo are all gathered awaiting Kinzo's arrival. Rosa reveals that Maria told her that the person that had given her the umbrella earlier was none other than Kinzo himself. They wonder if all their quarreling with Kraus was pointless, and Hiria says that it's possible that Kinzo was listening in on their discussions as a way to test their true intentions. Eva is in a panic and all but ready to give up, but Kyrie wonders if Maria really did get that umbrella from Kinzo. Rudolf speculates that perhaps Genji gave her the umbrella, saying that it came from Kinzo, but Rosa confirms that Maria says that she directly received the umbrella from her grandfather. However, Kyrie says that Kinzo is set to appear before them shortly. If he appears, the question of if he actually gave Maria the umbrella is pointless. They must simply prostrate themselves before him and accept their fates. And if he doesn't, they simply need to continue to pressure Kraus as they had planned. Either way, there's no use in panicking. Meanwhile, as the clock nears 10 p.m., Kraus and Natsuhi try to maintain their calm, leaving everything to Genji. Gohda and Kumasawa then arrive, having finished their rounds of making sure the mansion is locked up for the night. Natsuhi wishes to let Kumasawa go to bed, but Kraus reminds her that she was ordered to gather all of the servants as well. Shannon too then arrives, and all who is left is Cannon and Genji, who had gone to escort Kinzo.
Did any of you wonder, even for a little bit, whether or not Kinzo was going to show up?
I fully believed he was not going to show up, and I fully believed he was dead up until the moment he showed up, and I still don't necessarily believe it.
That's good praxis, honestly.
I was wondering the same thing, like, even when they were like, oh, Maria said that Kinzo gave her the umbrella, I was like, yeah, but she's a kid, right? Like, a disguise could have fooled her or anything.
Maybe.
She also has different motivations, which is another thing.
Yeah. Well, it also makes me wonder It makes me wonder about a few things, right? It makes me wonder, A, last time the sacrifice of the six, the first Twilight, Kinzo's like, we've lost all future games, this is it, this is the last one. And like it would have been if not for Ange, right? It's like, how much did he know? How did he know it? Just so did he recognize that he has to play differently if he wants to survive? Like, what changed this time? Like, surely Kraus went to him, and Natsui went to him to like ask him to, appear to the rest of the family, and he just laughed and said no in previous versions. So why did that change here? And why did he feel the need to go out and present himself to Maria? Clearly, the only explanation we have at this time is that Beato said, oh, I played my chess piece of Kinzo better. Kinzo certainly is acting throughout the story like he's got some knowledge of the game at large, and he has free will.
Mm-hmm.
But if he is just a piece for Beatrice, like, I am confused.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's fair to be confused. Because, again, even when Kinzo shows up, I don't necessarily think it's Kinzo. Not that we even have gotten there yet, but such a good opening to what was a lot of backstory before this.
A lot of scene setting, stage setting.
Yeah. This is the bit I was falling asleep in because we've got a lot of rain.
I did really like the tension.
Yeah, that's fair. It was good tension building for sure, especially up to the point where Kinzo arrives later on. I think we really are unsure of if he's actually going to walk through the door or not, which is very cool.
Yeah, that's kind of my answers. I would say, I was like, I have no idea what the fuck is going to happen here. Like, he could show up, he could not show up. And I loved Kyrie's reasoning as like, well, if he shows up, thinking about this is kind of pointless. So we should just focus on what we can control. I thought was really interesting because then it makes everyone feel extra out of control. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, she is really like I don't know, she's so calm and level-headed. And I don't understand why.
I don't understand her either. She's so good.
Maybe she didn't give a shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a sociopath?
Ooh. I mean, if her sister's anything to go by.
Fair.
I mean, yeah, honestly, the mafia upbringing, that'll probably do that to you.
Right. So I kind of love that we're starting to see more of Kinzo now, even though I think that Kinzo's probably a piece of shit. I'm really curious about...
Probably a piece of shit?
Yeah, probably.
Man abused his kids. He sucks objectively. But as a villain, I'm fucking here for it.
Yeah, I think he's...
I just love... You get 60 hours into the story and you're like, I think Kinzo might be a bad person. I'm not sure.
I've said that before, but I just like seeing more of him. It's not that I'm not sure.
Absolutely. I love when this guy's on screen.
Yeah.
I want to strangle him.
Yes.
That was like my only note to Kyle throughout this reading. I was like, yes, more Kinzo reading. Finally, he's doing something except burning alive.
I kind of love that we have a different answer from Maria about the umbrella as well.
Yeah.
It's always been Beatrice so far. So is that, like, how is that going to change the story?
This is the first time Kinzo has interacted with any of the grandkids, with exception of the end of chapter 2, where he like acknowledged Battler was in the room and that was it.
Yeah.
And Maria doesn't seem stressed at all. And is that because like what we learned in the last couple of readings, or did Kinzo say something to her?
Possible.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to kind of like, going back to what we were talking about before, I'm trying to figure out what his role in the overall game is. Because on the game board, clearly he's the person who's putting the ceremony into play because he wants Beato to be resurrected. But
yeah,
we never see him in the meta world, at least so far, with the exception of any time they're going to the Golden Land, quote unquote. But
yeah,
but he's not equal to Beato and Battler on that level, at the very least. But he does feel like more than just a pawn. Like, is there something in between, and what is that? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out.
We theorize so much about like what the details of the past between Beatrice and Kinzo is. We've got nothing on that. I think we're going to learn a lot this chapter about that. That of course adds more questions because question arc, etc., etc. So I'm very interested. Yeah.
You're not gonna be able to say that much longer.
That's wild. That's a wild thought,
Yeah.
Kyle. To say that we're almost starting the story of Umineko is wild.
Yeah, almost. It's almost here, guys.
I mean, you say we won't be able to say that, but I have a strong feeling that the answers will also just throw more questions.
No, couldn't be.
I don't think it can legally. They named it the answer arc. They didn't name it the question and answer arc.
Yeah.
False advertising.
When the appointed time comes and goes, Eva and Rudolf begin to pressure Kraus, saying that if Kinzo doesn't arrive within 30 minutes, they'll be breaking into his study. Kraus says that regardless of their scheming, the Ushirimiya family headship will be passed down to the proper person in the proper manner. Then, with a loud knock, Genji arrives, and with the voice he uses when speaking on Kinzo's behalf, tells everyone to sit. He then announces that the head of the glorious Ushirimiya family, and Lord of Rokkenjiima, the island that sparkles gold, Lord Ushirimiya Kinzo, is present. He and Cannon open the double doors to the dining room, and Kinzo himself enters. He laughs at the frightened Eva for having lost her bet with Kraus, and goes on to berate everyone present for failing to solve the riddle of the epitaph. He says that he had been planning to hand over everything to whoever solved it, but now that he has other plans. He announces that Kraus will no longer be inheriting the headship, saying that, much like one who can call themselves a genius or rich, a true successor is one who crushes all those who would attempt to stand above them, and forces everyone to accept their superiority. Likewise, Eva, Rudolf, and Rosa, who couldn't even defeat such a pretender, have no right to the headship either. No, with no one worthy of succeeding the Ushirimiya family, Kinzo says that it will end here with his generation. The Ushirimiya family perished in that earthquake, and everything since has been a short-lived vision of gold that will vanish as per his contract with the witch. However, Dr. Nanjo suddenly speaks up, saying that Kinzo, as a genius, expects too much from his children. Kinzo refutes Nanjo, saying that money is the crystallization of everything in this world, and all of their efforts have only brought about debt. Nanjo says that there are many things, as Kinzo knows, that money cannot buy. His children have created happy lives and families and brought him grandchildren that will carry his legacy on into the future. Kinzo laughs maniacally. Such valuable grandchildren he must have to be equivalent in value to the several tens of billions of yen he has amassed. Kinzo asks each of his children if their son or daughter is worth 10 billion yen, and each of them asserts so in their own way. Kinzo seems to take their answers to heart. After all, dreams of the future, miracles, and possibilities are the source of his magic power. No magic holds power without hope. While he expects nothing more from his average children, perhaps there is hope for the grandchildren. Kinzo says that he will personally test each of them to see if they are worthy of inheriting the Ushirimiya family headship.
Alright, someone needs to say it, and I will take that burden of Dr. Nanjo, best character. So, I think we can all pack it up. We have as much characterization we need, and we can keep on moving.
This is shocking to hear from you, Ben.
Wait, you like Nanjo?
I'm just saying that we finally got to see some sort of interaction with Nanjo where he tries to stop the fuckery of what's ever happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we kind of see more of the relationship between Nanjo and Kinzo when they're not just sequestered in the study. So, like, good characterization for him. I still think there's a lot more to be hidden between that relationship with Kinzo in terms of why he's sticking by this man for so long. Like, he calls him a genius. I think that Nanjo actually believes Kinzo's a genius. So, I'm really excited to see where they take this character, but also the bond between him and Kinzo for it eventually to go into, like, the 8th episode of the Answers arc or whatever, and they just reveal that really Nanjo's the villain and Kinzo's the hero of this entire story.
And I think we have heard Nanjo refer to Kinzo as a genius before, too. I really enjoyed getting to see them, interact on a more personal level. Like, this argument they have, Nanjo is really trying to appeal to a man, like his old friend's humanity, in a way where I'm like, I don't think he's got any left, man, but you do you. But he still manages to find that one thing that would get Kinzo to stop and reconsider and be like, you know what? You're not wrong. I should test my grandchildren. Which is maybe not the ideal outcome, but it at the very least spares the grandchildren from immediately becoming the first sacrifices. And you also understand why someone like on Kinzo's level, who is on such a huge power trip and is such an egomaniac, to ever consider someone like Nanjo a close friend. Like, Nanjo gets at that one little part of him that's accessible still. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
I'm truly dying to know how each chapter is related. As all these Twilights progress, there's holes in every story. Every chapter, there's a little hole. We don't get the full conversation before the family conference between the siblings. We don't see what leads up to the first Twilight. This one has definitely filled in a lot of holes, but the inconsistencies with Kinzo and all that make that kind of weird, right? So is it really true that Kinzo never left his room in previous chapters? What's the deal with the cutaway line, which I think was in chapter 3, where Kinzo tells the servants that to write up his will, but then we never hear about that again. Why an interest in the grandchildren now, when early in chapter 1 he swore off every member of his family as being weak for some reason or another? Why is he suddenly now saying, yes, I will test the grandchildren? It's almost as if if Beatrice kills you or something, you become her piece depending on how you resist. I don't know, something weird is going on. I just really hope the answer to all these questions isn't the whole story is make believe in Maria's head. I hope that's not the answer to Team Fantasy.
I don't think Kyle would make us read something with that ending, unless he actively wants to never be on an off-meta production ever again.
Bitch, I'm the only off-meta production.
Damn, he ain't wrong. If that was the one sentence summary, yeah, there would be more to it than that. But if that is what it is, this whole story is the processing of childhood trauma and how you grow. Because chapter 1 ended with the bottle message from adult Maria, allegedly, right? We had a lot of stuff earlier in chapter 4 to you could say you could summarize Team Fantasy as it's all in Maria's head, and then give the justification of this is a story about coping with things that you've gone through, and that could still be satisfying, right? But I do just hope it's more than that, right? I hope it's not 150 hours and that's kind of what it comes to. If it is, I'm even further in Team Mystery. I guess that answer kind of solves both Team Fantasy and Team Mystery in a way. Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be Team Mystery, it'd be Team Reality, I suppose, because that's not a mystery. Everything was a dream. Well, that's not a mystery answer.
All right, yeah, that's fair.
I mean, in the case of the grandchildren, in terms of him swearing them off but now changing his mind, is in those previous iterations, he didn't have this conversation with Nanjo. This is the first time this specific situation has happened, and so anything that has happened since he appeared at the family conference is all going to be brand new. And also, I do think it's interesting now, because thinking about where there are gaps in the story that we kind of have to fill in the blanks for, I think pretty much all of the stuff that's happening on Rokkenjiima right now since Kinzo showed up at the conference has been essentially completely linear.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Them in the cage, they wake up a couple minutes after they get disappeared. Gohda and Kumasawa show up at the kids' room literally 3 minutes after they run, so we know that that's continuous. So both of those threads so far have had no new gaps.
Yeah,
I believe that's correct. Yeah, there's not been any time jumps yet.
I think that the grandkids thing can be explained potentially by, so we know that the witches realize that there have been multiple games so far. I feel like Kinzo knows that there have been multiple games, and he has maybe seen something in his grandkids' response in the prior games in order to maybe give him a little bit more faith. Is kind of where I was thinking with that. Yeah.
What if that's the outcome of the conversation between him and Maria, where he gave her the umbrella?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's very much in team fantasy, though. There's no mystery that can solve that, I don't think, because of the requirement of this happening multiple times.
Well, except that it's, unreliable narrator is kind of the rationale you get to use.
Yeah, I'm struggling to understand who is narrating this one as well. I can't tell if it's Battler or Ange. I think it might be both in different parts.
Yeah, it's been an open question about who the narrator is whenever it's a scene when Battler's not present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the stuff in the dungeon sounds like it might be Kyrie's perspective, but then when they're in the bedroom of the guest house, I remember reading these lines because I was like, they stuck out to me. But it said, apparently Battler had been the one to suggest that they make a noisy barricade that would be like an alarm. And I was like, apparently. So,
oh, yeah.
And it's talking about him in the third person. So I was like, okay, so who are we? Is this omniscient? Who are we reading right now? I wonder if maybe it's Maria.
We haven't talked about the narrator in a while. We've talked about the author. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked to at chapter 1 and a little in the chapter 2, we talked a lot about the tense and the perspective that the narration goes into. We haven't done much to go into that recently. Because, there is jumping from perspectives, and then there's also jumping from some third-person outside party looking in. And that could just be the game's narrative, or it could be something greater, like adult Maria recapping. I think we got a really, really good puzzle piece where Ange was talking to the professor about the two different bottle messages that there supposedly are. And I think stuff like that is going to be more of what the Answers arc is going to be alluding to be like, hey, the truth is going to be hidden in here somewhere. And maybe that's like Team Mystery versus Team Fantasy, right? It's like, which of the bottle messages do we believe? That'd be cool.
I don't believe either of them.
Possible. Yeah, that is the third option.
Yeah.
I was expecting a third bottle message because we've seen 3 chapters, right? So what happened to the bottle message that could have come from chapter 2?
The third bottle message was Ava, itself. The fact that there was a survivor, unlike the first 2.
Oh, yeah.
The bottle message is kind of Beatrice's way of telling the story. With number 3, we at least have some, even if Ava doesn't say the truth of what happens, we still have some sort of semblance of a person. Ava's not really a good person.
A witness.
She's a witness to something. So there is at least something to tell the story. I don't know. I keep going back to the thought of what is the definition of a fragment? Capital F. And why? What is there an instigator between the differences? Or is this seriously a multi-universe sort of Marvel-esque thing where they're just different choices people made in different ways to tell it because of somebody's story, and they're just branching paths? Is that what a fragment is? Or is it something more direct where one outside influence is affecting people's decision making?
So based on Higurashi, I would I think I can speak freely about fragments to some degree. It really is more of a multiversal kind of theory. The Sea of Fragments is every possible thing, and it includes some wonky stuff like complete changes to setups and different starting positions in timelines. It can get really there can be quite large variations contained within the Sea of Fragments, which is why Berncastle's ability is the ability to find whatever fragment she's looking for if it exists.
This is going to be such a non sequitur, but I want to go into some of the notes that I have. I love how much of a ham Kinzo is. He is the worst, and I hate him, and I would like to stab him many, 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 many times. But he's such a ham, and I am loving it. Also, I don't know if I feel like this might have been something we touched on at some point. We've been recording this podcast for so long that I barely remember what we talked about 6 months ago. But his tie goes over his cape fastening.
I don't believe we've talked about that now.
And then into his vest. So it just like, and now I can't unsee it. Like I saw that in the sprite and I was like, that's weird and a little bit cunty, like go off. And then, but now like I can't unsee it. And so now I'm just like, this man was born to be on stage.
Hmm.
He's like a caricature of himself, isn't he? He's like,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. He's diabolical.
You two weren't in the chapter 1 episodes, right? But like my whole thing is that Kinzo is very Shakespearean, right? He enters the room
Yes.
and he fills the whole room, and his dialogue is just batshit insane. Like, yes, that's why I love him as a character, is because of how he changes the atmosphere just by being there. What presence.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And he comes in with lines like, life is but a daydream before the awakening called death, which...
Who the fuck talks like that?
Right? But then also calls back to Ange from like the last reading or the reading before, where she's talking about how death isn't like what is life.
Oh, people live to die.
Yeah, and born to die and all that. So, I don't know. That does have me thinking about like what 7th expansion might be trying to say about like the nature of life and existence. And I don't really have an answer yet because I feel like there are so many different threads of this that we're barely halfway through and have so many places they can end up that I'm kind of just content to see where they lead. But yeah. And then when he referred to his grandchildren as valuable, that's the kind of shit that makes me hate him.
Oh, yeah.
Just the worst person to ever live.
I'm trying to think of any redeeming quality he has.
Love to hate him.
Yeah, right? Beyond that, he's a fascinating character.
Yeah, that's it.
He knows what he wants and he goes for it.
Yeah.
I guess?
That's not a good thing, but it is a trait that he has.
True.
That is not inherently bad.
Yeah. It can be a good trait, that, potentially, as well. Just not in Kinzo's hands, unfortunately.
There's so much potential.
Oh, there is so much potential.
Just not in the hands of a power-hungry madman.
Can we say he's got unique style? I wanted to say good, but that's subjective style, so to some people it might be good.
He's got that one-winged eagle logo going for him. He's great at branding.
Yeah, he hired Dr. Nanjo, so that's something.
All I'm saying is if you can get people to call you Goldsmith, like that's a pretty
that
metal
is such
title.
a cool name for him. I read it the first time and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then the second time it appeared and felt natural, and I went, no, never mind. I'm good.
I mean, that's his witch name, right? Like, like whenever we see the name like that in all caps, that's his witch name. He's the only person who doesn't have a regular ass sounding name, right? Maria becomes Maria
in all caps.
You know, Beato becomes Beatrice, right? In all caps. And like that's why I was wondering, like, if you got the original Japanese translation of the game, if like it has, you know, dang it, what's the name of the most common Japanese script?
Like katakana?
Katakana, whatever it would be. And then you get like their names that spelled out in English characters.
I think it's something like that, but I don't know off the top of my head. And I couldn't find anything to check.
Every other time it's anything is said in English, like we get the brackets, which is peppered in a little bit. I can't get the Japanese text on my game because the mod only gives like English, Russian, and then the fan English translation.
Interesting.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of non sequiturs, I had a theory that I forgot to put into our notes that doesn't really fit anywhere, but I wanted to talk about it. Which is something with the epitaph where it says the key is what determines the sacrifice. Well, just like who gets sacrificed is determined by the key in the first Twilight, right? That's exactly what I have a theory on. Is I think I have an idea of what the key is.
I want to double down on a theory I had as well. I'm curious to hear what you have, because I had some thoughts about that.
Mine's not concrete. It's like an inkling of like what the key really could mean. I'm trying to remember what was said that made me like investigate a little further. I think it was like something about Gaap or something about but like something that she had said that goes into like demonology a little bit.
Only if he's a stud, was it that?
No, that's not why I started to Google this. But it was whatever it was. It got me Googling a little bit. I think just like what Gaap is in like real life mythology.
As one of like the 72 great demons, yeah.
Yeah. It was something about like her title or something like that I looked into it. But in that little like 10-minute Google search, I found out that like keys are a synonym for grimoires. So I wonder if it's pre-written in Beatrice's a grimoire or Kinzo's grimoire, the way Maria has a grimoire, and that's the way that the game is being controlled. Like that's how Beato is manipulating her pieces, and that's how she submits things before they go in, is like that she is writing out literally something in a book somewhere, and that is going to be something that maybe Angie starts looking for in the metaverse or whatever. I'm starting to think like that's going to be something that we see.
Okay.
Like Death Note? You write
A
it,
little
it
bit.
comes true.
Yeah, a little bit. Right, because like, why is Maria the only witch that we've heard of with a grimoire?
Yeah.
These characters have to have weaknesses if it's team fantasy. And I think like that is got to be something that's heavily protected. And the fact that Angie having Maria's grimoire, why she's able to borderline converse with her.
You never heard of min-max then, Capelli?
I don't understand how that is relevant to what I said.
Fantasy characters, min-maxing. They don't have to have weaknesses. They could just be.
Well, I mean, the min
You
part
understand
of
what the word min in min-maxing is, right?
I do, but they can still be super OP, is what I'm saying, and find ways to do things that are not like.
okay.
But the min is the dump stat. That is their weakness.
That is the
No,
weakness.
but it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness because they're so strong in other ways.
So you're just talking about maxing.
Barbarians who are susceptible to charisma saving throws would like to suggest otherwise.
So that is not at all what I was thinking for the key. I wanted to double down on Angie being the key. This one has changed because Angie's now in the game, essentially.
Okay.
And so Kinzo now gives a damn because his key is here for the epitaph to actually be solved this time. And I'd said that a while back, I think, about Angie potentially being a key, but I don't know. But we hadn't seen her at all at that point. I was just wondering if the person off island could potentially be it, and thus they would never solve it until she arrived, and she has arrived, and we've seen the story change pretty dramatically as it started. So
I will say this is a slightly different theory from Capelli's theory, but made me think of it. When Ava solved the riddle, she went to the library to look in a book.
Mm-hmm.
So the key being a book where you then have to find certain information in order to lead you to the right place would make sense to me. Could be a grimoire, could be something else.
Or what if like whatever Eva found in the library that tipped her off to the answer to the epitaph, maybe?
Yeah.
She said she looked for an atlas, I believe.
Maps have keys.
I believe that there's that.
Isn't it called a legend in a map?
Oh shit, you're right. Fuck.
Yeah, you're thinking about graphs.
Pianos have keys.
It's okay. It can be the min-maxing of maps. It's fine.
Oh my god, what's that map's weakness?
It doesn't have one.
It doesn't have... Exactly, Ben. Exactly.
With the matter of the headship settled in terms of all those gathered here, Kinzo says it is time to move on to another matter that concerns them. The true reason for tonight's final Ushirimiya family conference, the gathering of the 13 sacrifices needed to complete his ritual to revive Beatrice and open the door to the Golden Land. At first, everyone thinks that Kinzo must be having some sort of fit or making a joke, but once Kinzo summons the now 3 Chiester sisters and Nitsui and Rudolf get half their faces blown off, they finally realize that he is deadly serious. Eva asks Kinzo what he is doing, and Hideyoshi tries to pull her away to safety before he too gets hit by a golden arrow and dies. Krause attempts to confront Kinzo, but the new member of the Chiester sisters, Chiester 00, grabs him by the throat. The rest make a break for the door, but Chiester 410 teleports in front of it and blocks them. Kyrie attempts to hit her with a chair, but she easily blocks it and crushes the chair with another golden snake. Only Shannon, Kennen, and Genji remain standing calmly at the other end of the room. However, not even they are safe, as a golden arrow strikes Genji down, leaving Shannon and Kennen resigned to their fates as witches' pieces. Eva then gets killed as well, and Rosa threatens to hit Kinzo over the head with a chair if he does not release Kraus and stop this brutality. Kinzo merely says, if that is what she desires, then she must make it so with her own power. You who have always hid behind the backs of others in fear, show me the final bit of self-mastery that dwells within you. With a scream, Rosa swings her chair at Kinzo, but before it can reach him, Chiester 00 strikes her down. And with that, the first Twilight is complete. The 6 sacrifices are Eva, Rudolf, Rosa, Natsuhi, Hideyoshi, and Genji.
Third bunny. Third bunny.
We found the third bunny.
Yeah, you guys put that in my head. That's the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, and she's got an eye patch. All right, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was very excited when that happened. I was like, oh, her bunnies, they are real. It's all Maria. Maria done it. My first thought when they started killing people was, did Beatrice summon them on the very first Twilight? Because previously we were led to believe like her power grows with every iteration, supposedly, if we're living in Fantasyland, right? So we hypothesized that maybe she didn't have enough power to summon them at first. But we never did find out how they got killed, and I think we all just kind of assumed it was with the 7 stakes. But the descriptions were so similar that that was my first thought. And then they end up actually literally comparing it to that murder later when she's talking to Gaap. Is it Gaap or Gaap? I was reading it as Gaap because of the double A.
I don't know.
Me too.
But
I think I always call her Gaap, but I don't think it matters.
But yeah, I mean, this is what I think Beato's play is, because hang on, but I wrote it down where, okay. He literally lays out exactly why he's doing this. Like, and because she's refusing to use the red truth, her play is to make everything in game as obvious as possible. To like almost kind of a funny degree. Like, that's why he's so hammy. That's why he's so crazy. I don't know. It's interesting. And it's so overt that it makes me wonder what her secret play is this round. It's gonna be really interesting. Like, yeah, all of the new stuff that's happening this time is so interesting. And the way he goes off on Rosa is horrifying. It's just horrifying. Like, again, he's just the damn worst. The worst.
She deserves it, though.
Yeah, who do you root for in a Kinzo versus Rosa fight right now?
Kinzo. Absolutely Kinzo.
I blame Kinzo for the way that Rosa is. So.
Yeah, but the way that Kinzo is written is entertaining, and the way that Rosa is written is, I don't know why, like, it affects me so much more. I guess because, like, we haven't seen Kinzo abuse a child on screen.
Yeah.
Just an adult.
The way that we have with Rosa, right? But, like,
Yet.
Undoubtedly, Kinzo was worse to his kids than what we've seen how Rosa was to her daughter. Right? And they've both clearly justified it in their own heads. That Kinzo is objectively a worse person, but I want more of him on screen because of the entertainment value.
I don't know if what he did to his kids was worse. I feel like that you can't really compare abuse and trauma like that. I don't know.
Ooh, that is a conversation that I don't think that this is the time or place to get into. But you bring up a good point.
Yeah, I don't know that it is worse necessarily. We'll see. Maybe he murders a kid with his own hands, and then I guess that would be objectively worse than anything that Rosa's done. But, I am with you on Gaap, by the way, Becca, because there are so many references to other media in Umineko, and there's a book. Maybe it was a movie as well. The World According to Gaap. If I was an American, but as a Brit, I would say Gaap, and I wonder if there is a reference there. I haven't read it, don't know what it's about, but maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess
I'm choosing to believe.
You need to look into that source material to see how much it was influenced by demonology.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Because Gaap is literally a demon from demonology, like one of the 72 demons recorded in Solomon's Key or whatever. So
that's it. Solomon's Key. That's what got me to start looking into the Key as a grimoire.
Right, that makes sense.
I looked up. I was like, I have to know who this is. Like, and I just googled Dante's Inferno, Gaap. But in literature, he's a prince, which I was like, that explains a lot about the entitlement. Anyway.
Something that I forgot to bring up in the last pause, so sorry about this, guys, is the way that they all valued their children. And Rudolf was like, yeah, Battler ain't shit, basically.
Yeah, that's true. And it was a play.
So funny.
I fucking loved that. That was so good.
That's the thing, though, is that, like, Rudolf is a pig, but you're like, he's fucking charming, though. Like,
he is. He really is.
Of the four siblings, he is by far my favorite.
Because you don't know anything about him.
But even, like, if you take all four of them at surface value, like, he's just the most interesting one of them, right? And I've said this before. If you can bag Kyrie, like, to be with you for life, like, you're doing something right.
We don't know that Kyrie is a good person.
She's smart and very capable. Ethics aside, I think that says a lot.
She might be a sociopath. Just remember this.
She could be. They all could be. Yeah.
I think most of them are.
We've only read 60+ hours of these people, Becca. All right, I think we know there's a lot left. Yeah, I enjoyed his little, like, play to be like, Battler ain't shit, but basically said, like, his tenacity is, like, worth 10,000 other people. Which I'm like, that's actually kind of a cool thing. I'm like, why isn't Meta Battler chiming in on these comments? Right? Like, the way he reacted to his parents' death in Chapter 1, I would expect him to be a bit more, like, invested in those moments, but it never cuts away.
Yeah. And do we have the same 6 as the first episode as well? So you would think he would...
No,
because Shannon's alive.
Shannon's alive. But Shannon, we suspected, was a replacement for Natsui.
No, but Kraus shouldn't be alive. Kyrie shouldn't be alive. Both of them are.
Yeah, never.
No, there's at least, because Rosa was one of the survivors of the. No, she wasn't.
Yeah, she was. Eva and Hideyoshi survived the first one.
Yeah, Rosa did not.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Natsui survived the first one.
Yes, but we think that's because she had the charm from her daughter.
Yes.
That she hung on her door, and like I remember even like the red paint-esque stuff was like clawing at the door.
It really does seem like the key is randomly choosing, but how incredible would it have been if one of the Chiester sisters turned and blew off Kinzo's head?
As the 6th one as well.
Yeah, right?
I was hoping. Well, no, not really, because I do want to see how Kinzo plays this game from the ground.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had the exact same thought process. Like, how crazy would it be? But yeah, that's not happening.
I want to circle back on this who gets chosen for the Twilights thing when we get to later in the reading.
Yes.
I want to go back to something you said for this part, Becca, which is like whether or not you thought the Chiester sisters were in the first Twilight. In the notes, I put, no, I don't think so, because we were told that she's not strong enough. But the whole idea of their faces in the first Twilight becoming so twisted, like it was hit with something huge and like scorching and twisting their faces, like what else could have caused that injury? I thought it was the 7 stakes, but the 7 stakes are not capable of this as far as we know. So if Beato was strong enough to summon the Chiester sisters, the whole thing of her not being that strong, is that a ruse? Because it's still being used to say this is how she's able to summon more and more demons, right?
And there's also the question of, from the mystery perspective, what was used to destroy those faces, what is being used here. Kyrie later talks about, like, is it some kind of, like, remote-controlled plane with a bomb on it?
And if we are Team Mystery, like, these people clearly had been on the island for Chapter 1, right?
Potentially.
So that would be to say that the Chiester sisters were around, right? So I was certain that it was just the 7 stakes, but no, I'm more in line with Becca's train of thought. My next point, though, is that yay, Eva and Rosa are dead. Boo, that Rudolf and Genji are dead. I just need more scenes with Genji and Ronove to figure out what is the deal there. What is the history? Why are their names so similar? Why is it whenever they're there, there's like that stoic, like that head nod that just is like, hey man, mad respect to you, right back at you, human. Like, why? I are they? Is Genji just like a splinter or a copy of Ronove that Kinzo got in a deal or through some sorcery? I need to know.
Gay lovers, right, Becca?
I hope so too.
Hayley saw me hovering over my microphone for the past minute, just waiting to say they're gay.
Genji is my gay hero, all right, and that I take no shame in fully admitting that I want it.
All right, I need to come in and be homophobic here, but like, they're not gay.
Did you say hobophobic?
No, homophobic. What are you talking about?
I heard
Capelli?
homophobic.
I heard a B.
There was no B.
We'll check the tape.
There will be no tape after this,
So
Kyle.
you're saying Ronove does not exude gay energy?
I think he exudes incredible bi energy.
Oh,
Genji is extremely straight.
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah. Ooh,
But
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just, I think that they're two unconnected characters, and there's never once going to be a mention of there is a connection between them other than that.
Ah, red herring.
I think that is. I have not disagreed with you any more than I do right there.
I need somebody to take Hayley's place, so.
I'm happy to take that burden on.
I don't know. I just don't think that they are at all connected.
But every time they've been on scene together, like, they very much allude to the fact that there is a history there. Not romantic, but just like,
what?
You know, like they know. Yes, like in Chapter 3, right? Like Ronove and Genji, it's the first time that they are together on screen, and they very much like have mention of like, I know who you are, and like professional courtesy to you, sir.
Sure,
like,
but I don't.
Bare minimum.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll agree with that part.
The first thing Ronove says when he shows up to the dining room this time is, "Oh, I didn't get to greet Genji." They have history, clearly.
I don't think so.
I'm gonna tell you, the twist is gonna be a question I won't say often. I used to often ask people is like, hey, if you met a clone of yourself, would you fuck you? That's the energy that I feel with Ronove and Genji on screen.
I endorse this.
I reject this, yeah.
Is it one-sided, though? To Ben's point, I feel like, is it one-sided? Is it Ronove would and Genji would not? Is there a unrequited?
That's why I feel like Genji is more of a shadow or like a splinter of what Ronove is.
Fragment, if you will.
A fragment, yeah. I think it's a good way to put it. Just because, like, we haven't really seen Genji do anything outside of what he is coded to do. Right? And I'll dip into the sci-fi theory a little bit there. In Chapter 2, at the very end, when George and all of them go to the chapel, Genji stays simply because he's not allowed to leave Kinzo's side. He has to follow some sort of instructions he's been given. If Genji is just a AI replica, whatever, of Ronove, like, that explains so much. The names are so similar. They look very similar. Like Genji looks very similar, like much like an older Ronove. I don't know. That's just what I think is going on between the two of them. And I think Ronove is just tickled by it, maybe a little flattered. He's just like, what you've created is so interesting. I'd love to see it.
Also, yeah, the difference between them being that Ronove is a demon and Genji is furniture, like how Ronove has
How does that work?
has more free will than Genji does. Yeah, it's interesting because I've been thinking a lot of the same stuff that you just said, and I'm just kind of like waiting to get more information so that we can figure out answers.
So we can construct the shipping chart. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, while you've been talking about Genji and Ronove, I think I've come around to maybe it was the Chiester sisters in every single first Twilight. Because there was the banquet one as well, where that was also kind of precisely laid out, I think, and could have been done with Chiester weapons. So I think I might be on your side with that.
I like that you just kind of call them the Chiester sisters.
Chiester. I am, yeah. I'm leaning into that now. They're Chiesters now.
Chiesters.
It happened by accident. I was like, well, we're going to go with it.
Kinzo then summons Ronove, Virgilia, and even a new demon, Gaap. Ronove marvels at Kinzo's ability to summon so many powerful allies, saying that in the art of summoning, Kinzo's power is even greater than Beatrice's. Kinzo orders Gaap to capture the 7 remaining people for use in later Twilights. Summoning what look like pitfalls on the floor, she swallows up Kraus, Kyrie, and Dr. Nanjo in an instant. However, when she creates a portal to grab Shannon and Cannon by the door, Chiester 410 is forced to jump out of the way, and Gohda and Kumasawa are able to make a break through the now unblocked door. The Chiester sisters offer to strike them down, but with so much time to go before the second Twilight, Kinzo says to let them be. After all, they cannot escape the island.
Is this the first time that we've gotten Virgilia's witch title, Witch of the Finite?
It's kind of hinted at, I guess, previously, yeah, as if Beatrice is the Infinite Witch and Virgilia is a Finite Witch. But I think this is the first time it's been stated as her title, yeah.
Yeah. It kind of took... I was surprised that they started talking meta on the game board. Like, while they were literally in the middle of the situation, I was like, wait, y'all are just out here talking about this? Like, hello?
This really feels like the first time we have that overlap, like, directly with the pieces on the board. Like, it's been hinted at the way that Ronove, like, doesn't interfere with Cannon and Jessica, like, escaping the room at the end of Chapter 3. But it's never explicitly said. Like, this is saying the pieces on the board, at least as far as the Team Witch side goes, are the same characters as those in the metaverse. And, like, I need to go back and reread that comment, because it almost felt like Ronove and Virgilia were rooting for Battler a little bit here, even though they're saying, like, this is being done so that he can decipher something. But, like, it almost seems like they just want to get out. Like, that's just how the vibes I get from Ronove from the start, is dude just wants to not be here anymore.
Yeah, I wonder, because again, going back to them being demons, like, they're clearly in service to whoever summons them, but they still have some modicum of free will because Ronove has made fun of Beato in the past, and his help, quote unquote, if you can call it that, to Battler is like, how much of that was real? How much of that was him kind of doing what he wanted versus Beato telling him? Like, I don't think we'll ever have a clear answer on that. But I love thinking of him as a wild card. And so having them talking about it on the game board, I was like, who are they rooting for? Yeah, exactly.
I bet I could answer a lot of questions if I could boot up the fighting game and just see how similar Genji's moves are to Ronove's moves.
I'm upset by this.
I can't do that, though, because there will be characters that have not yet been introduced. If I boot up the fighting game and the fucking, like, professor, the occult professor, is a character, I'm going to lose.
He's actually the final boss.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think the fighting game has spoiler for characters up through episode
No,
7.
don't even tell me. Don't even tell me. I don't even want to.
Yeah, I really can't play until after we finish reading, so we'll get back to it eventually.
No, I'll
I'm
wait.
sorry. I think I heard you say a number, and it was way higher than it should be.
Yeah.
What, 7?
Yeah.
The fuck, man?
I didn't cut you off in time. Well, so here's the thing, is like, I forget who talks about it. It might even have been the narrator. That's like, there's more demon pieces on the board than there are humans on the island. Like, I think it was Kraus. God, I can't remember. Somebody says it, though, and I'm like, Beato did tell Battler, like, there was gonna be a point where it just overwhelms him, and it sounds like that strategy is just gonna be more and more people that just are not part of the Kirishima family or household, as far as, like, the servants go. and I don't see the human side growing beyond Ange.
Do the demons keep getting added, though, to add extra elements to the story? Like, to cover up other holes that hasn't been, like... Literally, Gaap is summoned so that she can transport people. And that's why she's there.
I mean, Gaap would explain how the canon mystery, the canon body mystery in Chapter 2... Like, her just creating portals, like, solves every locked room for Team Fantasy. Right?
Yeah.
If she was truly there the whole time.
But are the demons just excuses for how something happens, and we're in hiding up a different piece of this puzzle we haven't solved, like on Team Mystery?
I think so.
That's my interesting way to look at it.
And this is also why, like, if I have to pick Team Mystery versus Team Fantasy, why I prefer Team Mystery. Right? The complicated, more in-depth answer is always going to be more satisfying than Wizard did it, you know? I think the only other note that I have on this section is this is just me trying not to think about Gaap too much.
Because of the gap in her dress?
Part of it, but also just like...
Side boob.
Her personality is just fun. I love the shit that she gives Virgilia later.
Leah.
I love the fact that, like, she doesn't care about Kinzo's opinions. And I think part of that is, like, Virgilia is a witch and Gaap is a demon. Like, there is a difference in, like, the dynamics there.
Leah and Riche. I love that she does that.
Gal pals.
So disrespectful.
Gal pals.
But yeah, I would never classify myself as the type of guy to have a type, but she checks some boxes.
Interesting.
The only question is, are you a stud?
Am I a stud? No.
Sorry.
And that's part of the allure, is that I am not what she would be looking for.
I don't know if I like this. So there's two translations of this. In the one that we're reading on the thing, it says, but only if he's a stud. And then the other one that we see on the YouTube, it says, but only if he's hot. Both are good.
The YouTube localization is a little bit weird, because also when Rosa goes to hit Kinzo with the chair, in your description you wrote that he says, show me the final bit of self-mastery that dwells within you. And in the YouTube translation, it's self-denial.
Huh.
Oh.
And I remember because I had to look up what that meant to make sure I was understanding it correctly. And I was wondering why it was localized that way.
I think it means the same thing.
Self-denial is such an abstract term.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice of words.
Yeah, and it kind of means the same as self-mastery when you look it up. But it made me pause.
I think one is sarcastic and one's not. Self-mastery is like saying, like, show me how much self-mastery you think you have, but you actually don't.
Oh, I totally read it as sarcastic still.
Interesting.
You're not listening to the voices either.
Fair.
It's in the voice, for sure.
I did think I was about to get, like, a smackdown for Becca, and then it was just about the voices, and I was like, oh no.
I didn't mean to come out that so aggro, and I was like, wait.
You're not a purist, you're a subs guy, not a dubs guy.
No, it was just my way of being like, no, I have the proof. It's sarcastic. Proof that you wouldn't know about. This is my red truth.
Oh no, I was hit.
I lied. I do actually have one more note. What is the deal with Virgilia and Kumasawa? Chapter 3 very much leads us to believe that Kumasawa is Virgilia secretly. And Chapter 3 leads us to believe that what we see is what we get up until Virgilia gives Beato the idea for the Northwind fable. But here we have in Chapter 4, they are clearly two different people. Unlike Ronove and Genji, not a single comment is made that connects the two of them.
So I have 2 points on that, actually. One, does Kinzo call her Virgilia? I think he does.
God damn you, Kyle.
I think he summons her as Virgilia, which is interesting. And there's another point later on when they're in, like, the prison cell. Virgilia does say, like, this place is too cold for my old body.
This only raises more questions.
Kumasawa done it. / Maria done it. / Okanoge done it.
They all did it.
Yes.
To quote my favorite movie.
Maybe we'll find out in the Answers arc.
Will we?
Maybe.
We're gonna find new characters, apparently.
Apparently. I want to know who each person on the witch, like when you open like the character tabs and you get the witches, who's everyone's furniture gonna fucking be? I'm no longer convinced that Battler's gonna have furniture. But like, who's Ange's furniture gonna be? You know, like,
Burn Castle.
God, there's so much room. There's so much room for where the story can go. Like, I don't know, like with Burn Castle, it really feels like she's limited to put Angie in. She got one piece, and she chose Angie. That's the illusion that's been given to us. The rules can change, but as they are, I don't think Burnt Castle or Lambda Delta is going to put any more pieces on the board directly.
Okay.
Could be wrong, but the story is fucking wild.
Yeah, I agree. And it's only going to get wilder.
How? Just how?
You'll see.
How much time spanned between Chapter 1 coming out and Chapter 8 coming out?
I think it like 5 years maybe. Like I think it was like 2 a year basically. It was a very aggressive schedule.
All right. That lines up with the production schedule for Japanese media, from how I understand it.
In the meta world, Beatrice celebrates the arrival of the first Twilight. Battler complains about the grotesque method of killing, but Angie notes that it is perhaps the most ideal method she could use. Gaap appears, voicing her agreement. Battler notes that as the witch's corrosion advances, even more unsavory characters will continue to appear. After some banter about Gaap's fashion sense, Ange reminds Battler of the first Twilight in the first game, how those with half their faces destroyed could both be guaranteed in their identities and their total deaths at a glance. However, until Beatrice uses the red, or Battler can see these corpses in person, he will continue to doubt everything.
Even with Ange and all the backstory that we got that was half unnecessary, I still am glad Ange is here. And, like, I'm still glad that Ange can explain something where she's not trying to tug Battler around on a string. That's nice. That's all.
Also, Beato busting in, literally like, sorry to keep you waiting. Queen shit. I love her. She's the star of the show.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to see much of her.
All these new witches and demons can keep showing up, and none of them are gonna be her. They all just want to be her.
In a cold, dark void, Rosa painfully awakens. She's approached by Sakataro in his human form, and she doesn't recognize him. However, every time he lets out his trademark Uryu, Rosa feels like she's getting stabbed by long, thin, hard needles. Sakataro asks if she is okay, and tries to lead her away, saying that she shouldn't be here. When Rosa asks where his mama is, Sakataro says, "But the one who made me is you," which only further confuses Rosa, who has no memory of this strange child. Rosa begins calling out for Maria, and Sakataro tells her that Maria is here, but she is not Maria right now. It's better for both of their sakes that the two of them don't meet. Rosa finally recognizes Sakataro, but this only causes her to become further injured. She denies that this child could be Sakataro, and a tear forms on Sakataro's neck that bleeds black void until he bursts into fabric and cotton. Suddenly back in the moment after she had ripped Sakataro's stuffed animal apart, Rosa at first attempts to apologize and comfort Maria. However, once Maria rejects her attempts and continues to cry, Rosa decides it's time for instructive guidance. After all, when she was a child, many of her toys and treasures had been stolen, broken, made fun of, and thrown away by her brothers, sisters, father, and mother. And she didn't throw a tantrum about that. No, that would only have made them more mad. No, she thinks, it's because I held it in that I was able to become the wonderful adult that I am now. It is only when she feels that something is wrong with her hand that she comes to attention and realizes that she's been repeatedly hitting Maria's head this whole time. Looking down at her hands, she finds them missing, severed at the wrists where they had turned into ceramic and shattered.
So satisfying.
Yes. This is telling us so much about Rosa as a character.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's just adding more to the notion that I got last week, which is Rosa only ever considers Maria as, like, in terms of how she reflects back on herself. She never thinks of Maria as her own person or as someone with needs. And to the point where she's saying, I'm only able to be me because Maria is there for me. It's like having a pet for your own comfort, but you ignore it when it doesn't suit your needs. And she just has, like, a complete lack of self-awareness. She's considered herself a victim her whole life that she can't see the harm that she causes.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, I mean, she has been a victim for a lot of her life.
Yes.
Like, Rosa is one of the most tragic characters that we've seen so far, just in terms of how much she's been beaten down.
Yes, that is very true, because that is in my notes too, about how much shit she must have gotten her entire life from every single person in her family as a woman, the youngest and the weakest.
Mm-hmm.
And Ava, not a comforting big sister to have. So like she was, I mean, I guess there's kind of an argument to make that she's just as alone as Ange has been, or, you know, like they've kind of gone through similar situations in that sense, interestingly enough. And they've come out of it in two very different ways, although Rosa has lived through more of it. Yeah. I don't know. It's just crazy.
I have so much to say about Rosa, but I think it's going to wait until after this next bit.
Yes, there's a lot of we kind of get some Rosa's side of the story here to some degree, and it's interesting.
Even up to this point of her hands shattering, and I was like, yeah, that's justified. I'm glad that Maria's like taking control. But even up to this point, I was still like, there's got to be a reason. There has to be a reason. The Rosa is so terrible. That's not just based in trauma, but there's a reason she's making these decisions.
Back in the Dark Void, Maria, now wearing her witch's outfit, says that now Rosa won't be able to hit her anymore. Beatrice appears behind Maria and says, "Since an arm can pat a daughter's head, flip through a picture book, and make warm meals, I thought it might be okay to leave them." However, Maria replies that Mama hits my head more than she pats it. She doesn't turn the pages of a picture book. She doesn't even make food. She wonders why her mother treats her this way when she has done nothing wrong. No, it's Rosa who is at fault. Rosa would never play with her or eat meals together with her, but Sakataro did. Sakataro was a much more precious friend of Maria than Rosa ever was. Rosa tries to make the excuse that she was too busy with work and that there was nothing that she could do, but Beatrice cuts in and says that then there is nothing that can be done about Maria taking her vengeance out on Rosa. Beatrice asks Maria if she can forgive her mother, and Maria says that she can't, that Rosa should have the same thing done to Sakataro done to her. With a flash of blue light in Maria's eyes, suddenly Rosa is gripped by an invisible pair of hands as large as hers must have been relative to Sakataro's body. With her bones snapping like twigs, a nail cuts a gash in her neck and then tears her in half. However, instead of cotton spilling out, it's filthy black tar. Beatrice then asks Maria again if she could forgive her mother, if this was enough for her revenge, to which Maria replies that she still can't forgive her. With a flick of Beatrice's golden pipe, she revives Rosa and asks her to remember her sin. We then see another scene of Maria on the phone with her mother, with Rosa telling Maria that she has to work overnight again, but promises to eat cake and read a story and play games with her when she returns. The Rosa of now is nervous, but believes that she did in fact keep that promise. However, Maria reveals that on that day, a package had been delivered that required Maria to pay more money than she had on hand, and so she had to call Rosa's office to ask what to do. And so they had told her that Rosa had taken that day off, planned far in advance. We cut to a hotel room, where Rosa, just having hung up the phone, is having a drink with her affair partner. However, even he is made uncomfortable by the way Rosa lies to her daughter so that she can spend more time with him. Rosa accuses him of making an excuse to get rid of her, as all men eventually do once they discover that she has a daughter. In the dark world of Maria's heart, Rosa coughs up black tar, tells Maria that, if not for her, she would have been able to grasp her happiness as a woman long ago. She says that she only wanted Maria back when she could imagine building a happy family with her father, but then he abandoned her right before Maria was born. While he was able to leave and likely go find new love and a new family somewhere else, Rosa is trapped here with a child she hates. Rosa claims that she did her best to play the part of a good mother, but never once received any praise for it. Desperately seeking love of her own, only to be rejected because of Maria, who only brings her further humiliation because of her strangeness and incompetence. I hate you, loathe you, and up to this very moment I've never really loved you even once. Maria sobs at the curses dripping from her mother's mouth, and Beatrice tells Maria to smash this lump of meat that calls herself Maria's mother. Maria vows to take revenge for all of her days of suffering, and Rosa laughs, saying that Maria has been making her suffer, and she deserves revenge. Rosa says that she should have never given birth to Maria. Over and over, Maria kills Rosa in gruesome ways, and Beatrice revives her and asks her if this was enough to allow Maria to forgive her mother. Using Rosa's body as a toy, Maria is finally able to have fun playing with her mother. However, none of this will bring back Sakataro, who had been rejected by his own maker. Maria realizes that what has broken inside of her can never be fixed, because she too was rejected by her mother. Having killed her mother countless times, Maria finally begins to feel like she could maybe forgive her. After all, with total power over life and death, what concern do witches have for the nonsense of the human realm?
I'm not okay. It's a heavy fucking scene.
Yeah. Very heavy.
Yeah.
It was fun, though.
Great scene. Incredibly well written.
Yeah. Really does allow for a lot of catharsis from all of the backstory given in this episode thus far.
Really?
It's nice to see Rosa really express her thoughts and none of this two-faced bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was refreshing.
It also does damage to Hayley's theory, which I definitely bought into, that Rosa was a sex worker, and that's where she's been this whole time.
I think it kind of hit some of the kind of ideas, though.
Oh, she got to be a mother younger than she wanted to be, and the person she was with abandoned her, and she felt betrayed and hurt, and it's very common to see adults project that pain onto their kids who don't have a say in the matter. But they're still here, so that's the person you can project it onto.
Yeah, and of course, as we've seen, Maria is not the average child. She definitely has some kind of developmental disorder of some kind, well, by my guess at least.
I because of the trauma, but I still think she's a genius, brilliant kid.
Yeah, that's what's really interesting to me about Maria as a character, is that she clearly has social, she struggles with social norms. But I also read her as very emotionally intelligent, in that way that most kids are, where even if they don't know how to interpret something or how to articulate something, they still know when something's off. And I think Maria really has that. And I do think here, especially when it goes into all of how Sakutaro would reason with her to kind of always make her believe the benefit, give Rosa the benefit of the doubt. We don't know that she's blowing us off to go on vacation. She's probably having a late night at work. She really cares about you. She's kind of been gaslighting herself into this way of thinking as a child. And I wonder if anybody else had their reaction, because when she said Maria knew Mama was lying, I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. If we go, fantasy route and Sakutaro was telling her, then it kind of, I feel like it takes away too much of Maria's agency in a way. I feel like I have to believe that Sakutaro is Maria's coping mechanism for this, because like you say, I think she has a lot more emotional and what's the word for the other kind of intelligence is I just think she's generally more intelligent than she's given credit for. I kind of have to believe that she has used Sakutaro as a vehicle to get through and deal with her mother lying to her all the time. I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about that this was cathartic. I think I heard the word, because I did not feel like that at all.
Yeah, I thought so.
I was glad to hear that Rosa being honest finally, but where was the catharsis for you, Ben?
For me, it was the dam finally breaking of all the emotions that have been built up over the course of all of the backstory, is that we're finally seeing a little bit of release, even if it's not necessarily a healthy release.
Okay.
And that just felt good. It just felt mentally like we're seeing some resolution instead of the continual build-up.
In the way that Maria was in denial about the status of her relationship.
Yeah, and that is so frustrating to read, as being I know you're in denial, but I want you to know you're in denial. And just kind of having that dam broken is nice.
Okay, I can see that. I understand.
This summary, or somebody said something that made me realize that almost everything Sakutaro has done or said to Maria in relation to Rosa almost makes me feel like Sakutaro is more Rosa's furniture than Maria's.
But that's kind of been said to us, hasn't it? In that she created him, and so she took him away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so.
And I had that theory early in chapter 3 discussions where it's like, I think she had some interaction with a witch early on, and she did. No, wait, that was Rosa. That as a child met with Beato.
Yeah, met Beato and then watched her die in front of her, and then had to go back home. Rosa's had some shit, man.
Maybe a little.
She's really had some shit.
Yeah. I really wanted to believe that there was some logical reason for her abuse. But there really wasn't. It was entirely selfish, which is what we've learned. And I feel really uncomfortable with her portrayal, like, as a woman. I feel uncomfortable with how she is written as a woman. Not in a criticism way, it's just made me feel uncomfortable that this is what she deems a woman is more about having a partner than it is about being a whole person. Like,
than being a caregiver.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, like, I feel like that's going to be misinterpreted as me saying that, you know, being a caregiver is the best thing you could do. Absolutely not. No,
Yeah,
but she chose to have a child. Like, she's from a wealthy family. Even in the 80s, like, abortions have been around for millennia. They've just been different levels of safe, you know? Like, she chose to have that child. And then with everything that she is rejecting.
I think it's implied that she was left. It might have been like third trimester, I think, when he left her. So
I mean, I know I assumed that she was young, but still, she chose to have that child regardless. Like,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
And she has a wealthy family. She can afford a nanny if she was to ask her father for it, but she has too much pride to do that. Like, her views on what a woman are disgusting.
Also, do we think he would give it to her?
I don't know. But I don't think, even if he didn't, like, could she have asked Natsui to take Maria in if she didn't want her? Could she have asked Kyrie to take Maria in? You know, like, there were options. There were so many more options than what she did. And I don't know. I started out saying I don't like the way that she views womanhood. I don't like the way that it made me feel really uncomfortable. But the whole thing is just almost absurd. The way that she has gone about everything is just bizarre. I can't rationalize it or recognize any of that kind of behavior at all in myself. Like, it's like, if I was in her position, what would I do? And it's just like, there's so many other things I could have done.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it really depends on how severe her home life was with Kinzo, right? Like, how maybe she really didn't feel safe, like, leaving a child there or going back to him in that regard as well.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, she was what, very young relative. We talked about last time where Eva was like probably like 15 years older than Rosa, or some very large difference in age. So she was a very young child when her other siblings were already going off to college and marrying people, and I guess that was how she viewed. That was like probably the only thing that Kinzo viewed as a success that she ever saw of what her siblings managed to do, right? So that may be the only way she views life success is through finding a marriage partner.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because I got the same feeling, but I didn't really know how to put it into words, so I didn't know how to bring it up. So I'm glad that we're talking about this. But the way I read Rosa is she is entirely at the mercy of her own shame and abandonment. Like, part of kind of going back to what Ben was saying, what I think is cathartic about this and her being honest, and even in the scene with her romantic partner when she's letting loose about all of this stuff, if you think about her being in a woman with Kinzo, the biggest misogynist to ever do misogyny as the patriarch, all of her siblings are so much older than her, they're not around, and when they are around, they're bullying her. She must have, no one would ever listened to her.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that no one has ever listened to her in her life. And I think that's really why she has what she thinks is love for Maria, because Maria is someone who depends on her. And Maria is the first person in Rosa's life that ever would depend on her. But she also is just so consumed with so much shame that she is not who she expects herself to be or anyone else expects her to be. Like she's trying to present this front of being able to leave her child whenever she wants so it doesn't get in the way of her dating life. She is lying to her daughter about being a hard worker. And there's the line where she was like, no one could ever understand the way I felt when you said something off and the whole class laughed at you. Like that shame extends to Maria as an extension of herself. And like, it is tragic to see because you can completely understand how that could happen to a person, but it has so thoroughly consumed her.
Yeah. And I feel like if she had done almost anything else, she would be a character potentially to look up to as somebody who was trying to balance her home life and her dating life, her family life with her business. Like what a superstar kind of thing if she was actually doing those things
right
without harm that she is doing to Maria.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's even like sabotaging her own relationships. The way she went off on that guy in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an affair and he's married, so he does not sound like a delightful person either. And I do wonder if we're going to see who he actually is later on. She's like, you do this to yourself. What you were saying, Becca, about she has her own. She really nobody's ever listened to her, so she just goes on and on and on and centers herself the whole time without really thinking about what any kind of external consequences could be. Of her going on like this and not actually listening to what the other person is saying, because she herself has never been listened to, so listening to other people isn't important.
Exactly. Yeah, rich people will literally do anything except go to therapy. She's such a fascinating character. I hate her, but she's I think become one of the most interesting characters for me in this because she has had to juggle so much, and the way that she has dealt with that has been so very bad. It makes her really interesting. Yeah, there's so much going on with her.
Yeah, there really is.
Oh, she's also in crippling debt from a loan that Maria's father took out and then abandoned her as the co-signer of. Right about that.
Right? Like, man, I do kind of have a bit of pity for her. I really, I do feel sorry for her in a way. But holy shit.
Yeah, she's been saddled with more than I think most people could handle, but that does not mean that the things that she is doing is good.
She hasn't handled it either.
Yeah.
She's been saddled with it, but she hasn't handled it. Like, I think that she has broken down in a way that a lot of people probably would, which is a real shame, to have to address humanity like that. And maybe that's why her characterization here made me feel so uncomfortable, because it's like facing up to what people can be when they are given too much to shoulder. Yeah. I'm glad that Maria got to take out some of her anger at her. But I'm now concerned about Maria's future as an adult. Well, she dies, so it's fine.
Yeah.
That whole scene of Beato egging Maria on was just like, to me, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this little movie called Return of the Jedi, but there's
I've
like
never heard
a
of that one.
scene toward the end where this like evil guy who's got ostensibly magic powers is like egging the protagonist on to murder their parent, and as a way to like turn them evil. And, you know, I was just thinking about that a lot during this scene.
I'm sorry, are you comparing Rosa to Luke Skywalker?
I'm comparing Maria to Luke. Rosa's Darth Vader.
Yeah.
All right.
Beato is Palpatine.
I'll accept this.
That was such a wild story.
I don't know how much clearer I can make this.
Yeah.
We need to repeat it 5 more times. We haven't talked about Occam's razor yet.
Although I will say the one thing that made me really hit me too was Maria acknowledging that she herself is broken. She knows she's not the same anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the rules that they've established, can't be fixed.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Back on the game board, the cousins are in their room in the guest house. Battler accidentally wakes up Maria, who throws a tantrum. However, with a brief look of madness, Maria gives a creepy hee laugh, but almost seems like each she is imagining brutally killing Battler in punishment for upsetting her. Afterwards, Maria is suddenly able to forgive Battler, because after all, she is a witch. Suddenly, there's a frantic knock at the door as Gohda and Kumasawa arrive, having fled from the mansion through the rainy night. Kyrie and Kraus pick themselves up off the floor of what seems to be some kind of underground storehouse filled with old furniture. However, iron bars seal them in as one part of this larger underground chamber. Kraus wonders how, after falling into those pitfalls, they managed to fall into wherever this is, especially given that each of them had fallen into a different hole, and there seems to only be solid stone above them. Dr. Nanjo, Shannon, and Cannon are also trapped in the cell, and despite their closeness with Kinzo, likewise have no idea where this could be. Shaking off the loss of their partners, Kraus and Kyrie begin to work on trying to find a way out of this prison cell. Kyrie asks Dr. Nanjo if he knows of any kind of drug that would cause someone to instantly faint, as that might be a better explanation as to how they all experience the sensation of falling through a hole and into this room that seems impossible to be beneath the mansion's dining hall. However, each of their watches confirms that it's only been a mere 10 minutes since being attacked by Kinzo, not nearly enough time to have carried all their unconscious bodies down into this dungeon. Kyrie says that it's possible all of their watches were tampered with, and Dr. Nanjo likewise says that it's possible that there is some sort of drug like Kyrie describes that he just hasn't heard of. After all, in the human world, it's impossible to disprove such things. Kraus suspects this dungeon might be in Kinzo's hidden mansion. In the back of the cell, Shannon finds a telephone, and Kyrie begins thinking about how to use its parts to potentially pick the lock, certain that whoever trapped them here wouldn't have been so foolish as to leave a working phone here. However, Shannon tries the phone and discovers that it is working. Unfortunately, though, it seems to be unable to connect to the outside line and reach the police. Kyrie thinks back on the events in the dining room and is having trouble reconciling what she witnessed there as anything but a blatant display of magic. Just then, Kraus manages to get a call to go through to the guest house. Apparently, the phone was still connected to the island's internal line. Gohda answers the phone and hands it over to Jessica. Kraus orders the children to hole up in the guest house and stay safe until tomorrow morning. Each person on each side of the phone call then takes up the phone and confirms that they are safe for now. Those in the guest house secure the downstairs as much as they can given the large windows. Butler wants to go out and try and rescue those held captive, but George manages to talk him down. Returning to the cousins' room with supplies and makeshift weapons, they barricade the doors and windows. Turning off the TV so that they might peer if someone attempts to break in downstairs, Maria's only complaint, despite her mother having been killed, is that now it will be boring.
I really enjoyed this part specifically for the theorizing on the portals.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like we spend so much time, like, the mystery part of it is just in the murders, like it's a locked room mystery half the time, more than half the time, 3/4 of the time, like, and now, like, we're actually having something else to think about that's not just how did they die, but instead how did those people who are still conscious and giving us narration thoughts, how did they get from the dining room to the cell within 10 minutes or however long until they check their watches. And I think that's a neat element for me to be in there because it's something I have been thinking a lot about. Haven't come up with anything yet, but I like it.
Kyrie is your new bestie because she's really driving that conversation.
I mean, Kyrie's been my bestie. Like, I think Kyrie has never
True.
left my top 3 characters. Kyrie, Dr. Nanjo, that's it. That's top 3 right there. So, and they're both together. It's great.
Yeah. And this is a pretty good collection of characters.
It's a great collection of characters. I think it's so neat. We get a little bit more on Kraus.
And we haven't seen them interact much, yeah.
I mean, Kraus, this scene is starting to make me like Kraus, ? Maybe?
Kraus is a coward.
He kind of is, but we'll come back to him.
What has he done as an adult that, like, you guys are like, I don't like him? Like, I had that theory as well. And I talked to Kyle in chapter 3, and he's like, what has he done? Like, okay, as a kid, he sucked. Sure. What has he done?
His main sin is being boring as hell.
That would make him the one member of this family who doesn't need therapy. I'm sorry.
No, but he does need therapy. We know he needs therapy. Everybody here needs therapy. Something I think we can all agree on. He's just kind of gutless to me.
He is.
He's such like a... I can't think of the proper word. I want to say dead fish, and I know that's not right. He's just like...
One-toned?
He's not a good businessman, and he is entitled to everything. And he also, every time we see him, he's just kind of vaguely pathetic. So, like, for me, I was just like, you're boring. But
look at who his dad is. Like, I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying this is the first time we're going to get some screen time with the dude.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen from here, because he's been in my bottom 3 a couple of times just because I'm like, there's nothing to hold on to with this guy. But now I'm seeing the glimmers of something where I'm like, okay, this could be interesting.
I would say overall Natsui has kind of sucked, except for the time where she was rocking it on her own, pulled out a shotgun and protected the fuck out of some kids. You know, and I was like, all right, Natsui with the right motivation can be badass. I'm really hoping Kraus goes the same route.
Yeah.
He doesn't even, like, stand up to his wife for his daughter's sake, though. Because his wife is always like, that's not ladylike. You need to get good grades, blah, 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 at Jessica. And he doesn't back his daughter at all.
Because I think he thinks that's what's best for her.
Yeah.
Which is gross.
She needs to be brought up as of a proper breeding, you know, and that's what they think they're giving to her.
Even that is a stretch for what we've seen from him. Like, it is beneficial for kids to have good grades going out of school. That being said, like, that's the extent of what we know as far as his motivations. We haven't heard any of his opinions about her with Canon. We do have Natsui's opinions. We haven't seen any instance of him being abusive towards Jessica in any way. Just that Jessica is, for all intents and purposes, the most normal teenager in this story, where she just wants her parents to let her do what she wants, but we've never had a normal conversation between her and Kraus. This is the first conversation she's had with him.
That's why I liked this scene, and that's why I'm saying maybe I'm finally starting to turn a corner on him, because that is the thing that humanized him to me here.
I gotcha.
Was his conversation with Jessica. And that moment where she asks if her mom is okay and he hesitates because he doesn't know how to answer it, and that's all the answer she needs, like that, I was like, oh, that hit me. Like, I've been in that exact situation where my mom had to give me terrible news like that, and I asked her, like, is it okay? And she clearly didn't know how to tell me something. Like, that is very real, and it made me think, okay, like, he in some way very much cares for his daughter. So that's like the first real thing I feel like I've gotten from Kraus, like, this whole reading.
That's true. Can't dispute that.
Well, hopefully we'll get to more from them as we continue through it, because, yeah, a lot of characters we haven't had enough screen time yet in that group of people. So, back in the prison cell, Kraus and Kyrie continue to strategize while Shannon and Cannon crouch by the bars, listening for anyone approaching. They discuss how it's rare for them both to survive the first Twilight, and how odd it is that Beatrice herself hasn't appeared in this game. They hope that this time they'll be able to make it to the Golden Land and avoid getting taken advantage of by Beatrice for entertainment. While they're glad George and Jessica have survived so far, they know that Beatrice chooses the order of the deaths to maximize her own enjoyment. Cannon says their claims of them being random are just a blatant lie, and probably the Golden Land is too. However, Shannon disagrees with that last part. She says that she was able to enter the Golden Land for a short period of time once. She describes it as a dreamlike place of calm and contentment, like when you wake up on your day off and get to go back to relaxing under the covers. Cannon is disappointed, saying that he had hoped it would be a place where all wishes come true, and Shannon says that it's more like a place where there is no longer a need for wishes. It is a world released from everything, where all things with minds are equal. There's no distinction between humans, furniture, and witches. However, one thing the Golden Land lacks is happiness. It is a world of zero, a release from all negative emotions. Shannon's greatest happiness would be reaching that world together with George, and similarly, she assumed would be so for Cannon and Jessica. However, it seems in this game they have already lost their chance. Holding on to hope just gives Beatrice more to torture them with. Perhaps all they can do is entrust themselves to the fate as simple chess pieces.
So with this, I was like, is this the first time we've gotten hardcore confirmation that the furniture is remembering the previous iterations of the game board? Because everything we've gotten of them being aware that there's a game going on has, to me, read like they're aware that Beatrice exists and that Kinzo has this game with her, but I never got the sense that they were remembering the previous iterations until now, unless I'm just forgetting something obvious.
I don't know if they ever explicitly said it. I was always getting a sense that they were remembering previous iterations, but aren't able to speak on them, obviously. Like, Shannon can't go who killed her in the first Twilight of episode 1. I think she just kind of knows the result in the case, and like there has to be some sort of magical binding on why she can't speak to others about it, because obviously that's in a different fragment.
Yeah, I just was like, that kind of shook me the same way that Ronove and Virgilia talking did, and it was so cool. And I loved the part of their conversation where she's like, it's unusual for us to both make it past the first Twilight and be able to talk to each other like this. And I was like, oh, you're so cute. You really are like brother and sister. I love you guys so much. However, Golden Land kind of sounds like a bummer. I don't know about y'all. Sounds boring as hell to me. Like, I did not like it when she was describing it, even before she said it was a world of 0.
Before she gave the negative, I put in quotation marks.
It's not negative, though. 0 is just 0.
Okay, we can go into the math. I meant like she's speaking it up, but then she gives the drawback of it. That's what I meant by negative. Like, the drawback is that there is no happiness.
But that's the thing, is like, up until then, I didn't really see a positive either. Yeah. I was just kind of like, this...
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying that the way that the story was phrasing it was that here's all the positive, then here's the drawback, aka negative. But negatives are bad to use when we're talking about numbers in 0, which 0 is a number, saying. So, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But yeah, if I don't know, Shannon, lows can be low and they can suck, but if I'm not getting highs as well, like, it's not worth it to me. Give me the full range.
Yeah, it very much feels like the kind of thing that furniture would strive for, right? Like it's the release from the burdens of being furniture more than anything else.
True.
I don't know if regular people would be like, yeah, sign me up for that 0.
I don't know, man. That feels kind of good to me right now. I'm mad stressed this week, though. So.
Yeah.
I'm really restless all the time. It would drive me insane.
Except that it wouldn't, because you'd be free from all negative emotions.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Exactly, right? It would just be bliss. Wouldn't it be bliss? Wouldn't nothing be?
Bliss wouldn't exist because everything would be a baseline.
Yeah.
Bliss is the baseline.
Yeah.
0.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question.
I mean, we talk about ignorance being bliss, like something I fully believe. And ignorance in this case, it would be ignorance from emotions. Like, even though you're not, you know that they're there, you don't know what you're missing because you can't feel what you're missing. So therefore you have no idea. But like, then the baseline is bliss in a sense.
Yeah, but then that starts to no longer feel like bliss. You're there for eternity, man. Like,
yeah, but you don't care because it's blissful, because you're ignorant.
It's not going to be bliss after a certain point.
You don't know what bad feels like anymore, so it doesn't matter.
I won't stand for it. This is dystopian.
Hayley and I agree again. Oh no.
Who hasn't woken up on a Sunday and been like, man, I get to go back to sleep? Yes. That's the Golden Land, apparently.
I want to go to sleep right now, Becca.
Let's wrap it up then.
Just then, Cannon senses the presence of people approaching and alerts Kraus. As they all ready themselves to attempt to negotiate with the mad Kinzo, Curie reflects on the fact that during the phone call earlier, she'd been able to confirm that their watches had not all been set back. They really had been moved from the dining room in the mansion to wherever this dungeon is in only a few minutes. As the four people that Canon sensed approaches, Kyrie has Shannon stand in front of the phone to hide its presence with her skirt. Then, Kinzo, Virgilia, Gaap, and Ronove arrive. Ronove introduces Kinzo as Lord Goldsmith, which is apparently the pen name that Kinzo would use in his occult writings. Dr. Nanjo asks Kinzo where they are, and he informs them that they're in Kuadorian's basement. However, according to Dr. Nanjo, that should be impossible, as that location is much too far away to have reached in the time since they were captured in the dining room. Kyrie comments on the dungeon with torture equipment in it beneath Kinzo's lover's basement, and Gaap, Virgilia, and Ronove joke around about BDSM until Kinzo cuts them off. Kinzo reveals that he plans to test each of the grandchildren to see if they are worthy of inheriting the Ashirmiya family headship, and if any of them succeed, he will cease his ritual. He asks Shannon to move aside, as he is the one who had the phone placed here. Kinzo orders Kraus to call the grandchildren in the guest house and inform them of the start of his trial. Virgilia and Gaap continue to bicker, and Kinzo and Ronove chuckle misogynistically.
Alright, so we talked a little bit about, how some people got uncomfortable. I think the idea of Kinzo testing his grandchildren is actively uncomfortable for some reason. Out of all the things that we just saw, the fact that he's now going to have something slightly different than just the thing that he's already laid out with the epitaph for the grandchildren is scary, and I'm scared that they're going to break them. Even though we've seen them break, I'm scared they're going to break them worse. And I have no idea what the Maria versus Kinzo would be, because that's a unstoppable force meets an immovable wall scenario.
I'm so excited for that. Truly.
Yes.
I just there's going to be explosions that we're never going to recover from, I think.
We're going to get a Rose Garden Tower battle again. Which you loved, Ben.
He's so excited by that prospect. He's just so happy about it. He's beaming right now on camera.
Help.
But I'm excited for that too, because if he's gonna pick one of his grandkids, isn't Maria the most likely one to succeed?
Absolutely.
What is that gonna be?
I feel like the only person it can't be is Jessica. Right? It could be George because of what happened between him and Beato in Chapter 3 with reviving Shannon. And then Battler has this whole thing where he's denying magic to the point where I feel like that could just interest Kinzo in a way, but ultimately he'll be like, no. And then Maria is just they were talking about it in Chapter 3, oh, these two have a ton in common, to the point where they were making connections between their two names in the epitaph.
Yeah.
I think George is the least equipped to handle Kinzo, because he embodies so much of what the adults are, especially his mother. And I think that Kinzo sees all of those traits as extremely weak, and I think George will just be seen as weak and be crushed immediately. My guess is that it's going to go George, then Jessica will go and fail, then Battler and Maria will be left alone, just the two of them, and they will go together because I bet Maria will be called in, and that's when Battler is finally going to get to witness something between Maria and Kinzo. Is my big theory on how this is going to progress with the grandchildren. I think George will die immediately.
Die? You think Kinzo's just going to straight up kill him?
I think that he's going to be one of the sacrifices when they fail.
But he's got the last sacrifices locked away in the jail.
He's missing 2.
Yeah, but I think he's going to get Gohda and Kumasawa.
I don't see Gohda and Kumasawa being the two that are close, though. Who's left to be the two that are... What? No! Gohda and Kumasawa are with the kids.
The two that are close has to be Canon and Shannon.
Shannon and George.
Or that, possible too. Yeah, I could see that.
That's where I think that if George goes out and is the first one to attempt the trial, he and Shannon die as the two that are close, and they die together.
I see that.
Leaving Canon and Jessica to be 4th, 5th Twilights, and then actually you leave a lot of Kraus, Kyrie, Nanjo, and then the 2 other servants to be a mixture of the last ones, leaving Battler, Maria, and 2 others.
I do think that the George conversation with Kinzo can go one of 2 ways. It's going to come down to his relationship with Shannon, and it's either going to be, my grandson wants to be with furniture with a servant girl, how pathetic, or he could see a connection between his past relationship with Beatrice. And through that, we will get an insight to their past. That's what I think is going to happen. As far as the two being separated, yeah, I think that scenario that you presented is the most likely outcome. I do want to use this moment to reflect back on something that surprised me didn't talk about yet, which is the fact that Kinzo said, forget the epitaph. You all cannot be my successor with solving the epitaph anymore. That is off the table, which is crazy considering we just saw it solved. So we were thought that going into chapter 4, that's what it was going to be. So now, not only is that off the table, we have 2 ways out. Well, I guess 3 ways. If anyone solves the epitaph, they won't become the successor, but they will stop the ritual, which didn't happen last time. Kind of crazy. Also, if they kill Kinzo, apparently that ends it. Or if one of the grandkids becomes a successor. How crazy would it be if a grandkid solves it, kills Kinzo, and is chosen as the successor? Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see Maria go full scorched earth on this.
Yeah, I think Georgia's got it in her.
Mirio and Kinzo are the 2 that are close. They're the Twilight for that one this time.
Could be.
No, there's no way.
I thought about that. But then Kinzo dying satisfies the clause to end it.
Yeah, that'd be hard to do.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. It'd be fine, Kyle.
We'll see.
Stretch your imagination like mine.
All right. Well, that was the end of this week's reading. Next week, we'll be reading about 3 hours of the VN. No, that's definitely not right. It's not 3 hours. It's more than 3 hours. Oh, no, it's 2 really short parts and then 1 2.5-hour long chapter.
Insane.
That one is a doozy. And that's 3 hours of the VN ending on the line, Kyrie-san did not answer through the phone again. After which the clock shows 11:47 p.m. And that is videos 67 through 69 of the 2 playlist. Now I know Kyrie survives to the very end. Maybe she dies at the end, and that's why she doesn't answer the phone. But we know there's no tension halfway through.
Soon this story will start.
Soon.
Making sense? I'm not holding my breath.
Still no more red and blue truths.
Yeah, no red, no blue.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get any red until the end of the chapter.
I'm so excited for the red versus blue battle. I'm basically back in Halo right now. Like,
the whole thing is like, oh, she can just submit a bunch of red text at the very end. The obvious counter to that is that he bombards her with blue right at the very end as well. And gives her a minute to respond.
You know, well, the reason that we've not heard much from Kraus or Nanjo is, like, the murderer always flies under the radar if it's a mystery.
I'm still fully on board that Nanjo could be, like, an evil baddie worse than Kinzo.
Nanjo, Kumasawa, Kraus.
We do still have the line at the start of chapter 3 between Natsui and Kraus. That's like Nanjo and Genji. I think they mentioned Gohda and Kumasawa are like all on our side, right? That was the thing that really sold me into the theory that Kinzo's dead. Is that all of the servants know, and they are truly loyal to Kraus and Natsui. There's just so many like these like throwaway lines. That's like, but you can't just say that and move on. What the fuck was that?
Yep, and you thought you had one solved, and then they tore that away from you. So,
jerks.
I wonder. I don't know that. I think you might be. I don't see Kinzo's tests for the children ending up in their immediate deaths. I can see it potentially leading to their deaths eventually. But I don't think it's going to be like one dies, then the other, and then the other. I think it's going to be maybe that they're earmarked.
I just hope it's not something like, oh, I'm testing you to kill your parent.
Why not?
Because it's not an interesting conflict to me.
Okay.
I trust this writer to be able to make anything an interesting conflict.
Hayley doesn't.
No, I do.
Hayley's come around.
I actually do. No, not to the writing. I think that he has I've said this before, the creativity and the imagination is there. He just really, really needed an editor. Like.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us again. I hope you all enjoyed reading this segment. And I look forward to hearing y'all's thoughts on this next one as well. So, I forget how I sign off on these to get to the point where I say, remember to take off meta.
You did it.
That was it.
Just cut it right there. You got it.